Maharashtra, in India, of course, 400 kilometers from Mumbai, and we are well connected with railway and aeroplanes, air travel. So we have our institute placed in little rural urban area, wherein many students or main occupation is agriculture again. So our institute, therefore, we have focused to work on many agricultural projects, and that's why there is a lot of scope for students to come out with their own startups, because there is a lot of demand, and there are many issues in agriculture which can be solved by the students, and they can come out with their own enterprises. And therefore, in last 1.5 years, again, Dr. Nandakishore is also leading the team, research and development cell, through which we are contacting many industry people, and we're working with them on real life issues to come out with good technology based solutions for um, those industries as well as the farmers. So in last 1.5 years, we have a MHRD, Minister of Human Resource Development, recognized Institute Innovation Council. And through that Innovation Council, we have worked on various projects, and we have filed 12 patents in 1 year. Out of that, already 6 patents have been received, granted by the Indian Patent Office, and rest of the patents still are in the process of grant. So our students are working and participating at national innovative competitions organized at national level. For example, hackathons, wherein international participation is also there in India, and our students are also participating. Our students are also participating in competitions organized by industries, and therefore, wherein they're coming out with good, you can say, performance with top level prizes. So we are trying to build a culture. And last 1.5 months, I think, we had gone through various institute innovation or startup lecture series conducted by MHRD India, and most of our students have participated in that series. So many students are ready to come out with their own enterprise, and they may need some guidance about how to go ahead with their own ideas and how to take the help of industry to bring out some good product. Because, while discussing with the MHRD people, the success rate of startups in India is about 4 to 5%. I don't know what is the success rate in US and all this. You may throw light upon that. And if you want to increase the success rate, even though there are 100 startups coming up, out of that, 4 to 5 survive over a long period. And that is the situation in India. And as you know, this Sangli, nearby district like Kolhapur, it is the agricultural belt. Also, we have a good industrial belt, because we have lot many industrial development corporations near around, and mostly related to automotive and agriculture field. So our students can develop some ideas, some products which may related to this automotive or agricultural based, and then how to go ahead if they want to start up their own enterprise, then what they should do, and what uh, critical factors they should analyze, and how to take decisions in the time wherein it is against it is going against the development, just like COVID situation we are facing a lot of problems. So if such calamities occur, then how one should take decisions, and how to stay in the enterprise, and then think of growing, and how to think aloud or critical thinking, come out with the new ideas, networking, all these things. If you throw light upon those, then definitely it will help. And we can always have your guidance to our students through online. And that is, or you can guide us continuously. This is a starting, you can say, and our students may approach you for some suggestions, from some guidance through Nandakishore. And Nandakishore is there as a mediator between us, and he will take it ahead. So I request you, I welcome you once again on this platform of webinar on behalf of Pvpit and our management, okay, and all my faculty members and students. So I request you to, you can think those, you can take these points into consideration, and then you can discuss with the students. They have a lot of questions today. Okay. So I welcome you once again, and I request you to continue with your sessions.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
Nakesh, you're going to say something?
Yeah. Sorry. So thank you, Principal Sir, for actually giving the brief introduction about the entire thing about our institute here. And I wanted to mention, yeah. So I have some questions. Number one, Aristo, actually, I was not able to speak with you, so we were just doing LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I wanted to confirm. So how long are we going to have the session from your side? Is it okay, 1 hour or 2 hours? Like how much?
Yeah, 1 hour, 2 hours is fine.
1 hour, 2 hour. Okay, great. So
For you, anything.
Pardon?
For you, anything. You helped me out with my first startup.
Oh yeah, that's true. No, but not because of that. Not because of that. I'm just wondering because we didn't really talk about it. I just mentioned let's do this session, and you just agreed, and we had no other conversation. We just agreed that we're doing it, right? So then now I'm just asking you again that, so 1 or 2 hours is good. So because we have a lot of questions, and I'm just gonna share my screen just a bit, and I wanted to show you what we had in our institute. So since I joined this institute, what I did was what I saw in our institute, the students, apart their curriculum courses, there are some things which are very essential in the industry, or probably for startup or something like innovation. There's some extra things that the students should be doing. So that's what I was thinking when I joined this institute. So created a group of students in each department, and then I asked them to self-learn, do something some training, do something on Raspberry platform, do something on Python programming. Probably can you actually make your own CB? So something like those, I started throwing to students, and then so call it
you're breaking up.
Skills. So that's what
You're breaking up.
Am I breaking up? Okay. Yeah. So can you now hear?
I think it's because you're screen sharing at the same time, so it's breaking down. There's not enough bandwidth.
So I'll stop screen sharing now. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I was mentioning so in our institute, what we start was doing something additive skills, hands-on skills, additive skills. And then I started thinking so apparently in our institute, we actually started having this spoken tutorial from IIT Bombay. IIT Bombay is one of those institutes like MIT from Boston. So the thing how Boston MIT is there, the similar way we have IITs established in India. So under that platform, they're actually having a lot of open source technologies, which they're trying to teach the students. So now our students are already learning it. We have more than 1,000 students are actually participating in those kind of learning activities. So that's what the start happened in this institute since I joined. And then what I did, I actually asked all my students, those I actually knew from this institute, to participate in some kind of innovation related activity, any kind of competition which actually I saw around in our region. I asked my students just go submit your abstract and form your team and just submit. Let's see what happens next. So like that, with that process, approximately there is an incubation center which is in the center of Pune, which is near Mumbai and Goa, in the center of Mumbai and Goa. So there they hold one competition. It's called I2I Ignited Innovators of India. Under that, we were successful to submit around 405 students. So 405 students making their group 4 students each, so around 100 groups. They participated in something like that activity, and around 30 teams got shortlisted. So that was very, very big impact. The number one. Number two, then there is this platform MHRD IC, which is actually Government of India's HRD, Human Resource Development Innovation Cell. So under that, in our institute, we have an IIC, Institutions Innovation Council, and then this MHRD innovation, there is a right now national mission of innovation happening in India. So this IIC is kind of taking that forward, trying to create the awareness and trying to create the student force to actually do some kind of innovation at the education level, and probably once they move into industry, then they can actually be more prepared to do something more innovative things. So that's probably one of the thought. And plus, they also want their students to become entrepreneurs rather than just finding a job. They want us to be like you more than just finding a job somewhere. So that's the other thing. So they have some kind of a hackathon, which our principal already mentioned, and there also we actually kind of were successful in making at least 200 to 400 students to participate in something innovation. And then from those kind of problem statements and innovation related culture, we started having concepts, creations, ideas, and then we started actually drafting that into patent applications. And because we are not financially that sound, we are I'm not saying that India is not that financially backward, but still it's relatively backward compared to US and other developed countries. So from the patent side, what we have here, we have two things. One is a design patent, one is a utility patent. So we focus more on the design patent. So you have some creativity, then you actually kind of do it in a CAD, you design it, and then we file for a patent, it's kind of a design patent. And we have right now around 26 design patents that are to be filed, and then around 6 are already granted within 7 months, by the patent agency in India. Now the question is we have around 26 probably patents, plus in our institute we have a lot of students who are doing different innovation related activities, but then we don't know really how to take that forward, how to actually make the students to do some kind of a startup. How what is actually a startup? That's the basic definition. Many of us don't even know what's a startup. Even I'm your friend, I know you did a startup, but exactly I don't know what is a startup. How does it start? What is the basic thing to actually make it happen? I recently got educated, because our government of India is actually doing a lot of things to educate, faculties and students like us to become more aware and probably to actually motivate and inspire students to do some kind of a startup. But it's not very clear yet. It's still a gray area. So that's why I thought I wanted you to actually be here, so you can actually probably motivate us, help us. Probably you can also see some great potential, because we are in Sangli, Maharashtra. We have a good internet connection, we have power, we have kind of good infrastructure, so as Montreal is a good place for startups because it's cost effective, the power, hydropower is cheap and stuff. So similarly here too, power is cheap, labor is labor is not that expensive, and we can actually it can be a very great potential here too. That's what I think. McGill, and I'm from Madhunagar right now. McGill, Montreal, Madhunagar. I don't see much difference. In terms of if you want to do something, I don't see any difference. And as our principal mentioned, that we are actually in this agriculture belt, so we can do a lot of things with respect to agriculture. So that's our main focus, and our students are doing many things just for that agriculture, to bring that mechanization, to bring that innovation, to bring that kind of precision agriculture, this drone technology, irrigation technology, pre-harvesting, post-harvesting technology, post-processing technology, soil actually preparation technology, and all those kind of things which are still probably essential in India, but they're not really developed to that extent. So today's session is more or less the students are kind of in that, and they have their questions if they want to do a startup in India, or probably if there can be something like, collaboration between India, US, Canada, and if we can actually work together on that platform, is it possible? Is it legal? Like, whatever. So all those different things. If it's okay for you to share, whatever is okay for you to share, you can share. If whatever is not okay, you can keep it with you. It's my request. It's my, you're my great friend. And that time, actually, I've seen you, you had your little space. So I want you to motivate my students. What is a startup? A 10 by 10 or like a 20 by 20 room with computers, with some internet good connections, with a treadmill, to keep you fit, because you have to work a lot of hours, and then you actually work on the treadmill, and then you work on the computers, and all those things. I want you to bring that picture, what is actually a startup. What is a startup? What is the incubation center? There could be different things, startup for technology, startup for many other things, like startup for social, startup, but some kind of an example of a startup. I want you to make that picture clear to our students, and that's my request, and that's what I wanted to mention to you here. And I think I'll actually leave you now, because I just wanted to also convey the rules to my faculties, what we're doing here. So I'm sorry, am I actually speaking a lot, or I don't know.
So do I speak now, or you're still going? What's happening?
Yeah. I just wanted to before I let you speak, I'm just going to mention to my faculties. So hello all faculties here. So the questions are there with you, right? So you can also, so there are moderators Dr. Professor Magdum, Professor Sudhar, then probably there is Professor More sir, there is actually Professor Karade sir. So all you are going to be the moderators, and you're going to look into the Yao chat. I'm going to share the Yao chat with Aristo as well, so you can actually look into these questions there if they're typing things. And you're going to share those questions, by reading them in the audio form, so Aristo can listen to it, and then depending on the question, he can actually start answering it. So I also have all the questions. I wanted to share that on the screen, and that's what I was trying to do before. I'll try to do that. I hope it doesn't lose any bandwidth. So it's all yours now. So can I just request our faculty to introduce you, and then you can start. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, Maurice, sir.
Yes. Good evening, one and all. I'm very fortunate to introduce a great knowledgeable personality here, Mr. Aristo Mohit-Coker, sir, from Canada. Welcome, sir. On behalf of Student Development Program organized by Pvpit, BUDHGAON, Sangli, I heartily welcome you. And Mr. Aristo is a startup specialist and successfully started 2 companies in North America. He's a founder of Downline Company located at Birmingham, Alabama, USA, which provides health, wellness, and fitness. With this, he is a former founder of Flutter Fox Company, which provides on-demand insurance, property, and inspections. As well as he is a director property of and owner innovation Solera company at Canada. He also works with Tribal Scale company, which works in the digital area. He is a volunteer experience at West Haven Community Center, Canada. With this also, last but not least, he is a best friend of my colleague, Dr. Dawade sir. Okay, here with this, I conclude this small introduction of this knowledgeable personality, Mr. Aristo. We are very happy, sir, with you. now all participants be ready for the interactive session on innovation, startup funding, incubation, and entrepreneurship. So here again, welcome Aristo Mohit, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
Aristo, so yeah, I want to kind of go back to some of the earlier comments. Let's see here. Yeah, so I want to go back to some of the initial comments on what you're doing with regards to you have students that design many patents, and then you're trying to figure out how do you start a startup and how do you inspire the students to do so. So I think the really great thing that you have, the asset is that you have really bright and innovative engineering students, which is going to be the core of creating great products and services. And that's your strongest asset. You also mentioned the affordability and the low cost of getting an idea off the ground, which is also really critical. So you have really great ingredients to start some really great businesses and to cultivate entrepreneurship. But the key then is, well, the question is not how do you start a startup, it's how do you cultivate entrepreneurship, and are the students willing to be entrepreneurs and adopt the right mindset to do so. So you definitely have the technical competency and you have the intelligence to do whatever you like to do. Now it's, can you instill the right mindset? So I'm happy to answer questions. I'm just not sure what the question is. So what am I answering first?
So may I mention it? Okay, is everyone listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so since we have a lot of questions, so maybe is Dandekar sir there? Hi, Dandekar sir.
Yes, I am there.
Yes. So would you like to start with your question, sir?
Yes, I would like.
Please, sir, go ahead. So we have faculties and list. So Dandekar sir, then Sneha Patil madam, then Karade sir, Sudhar sir, Magdum sir, and even myself. So I'll probably go at the end. I'll go at the last. So before me, I'll actually, and there is also an IIC platform. So probably there was supposed to be one faculty, but I have the questions with me. So I'll be last there. So Dandekar sir, then Sneha Patil madam, then Sutar sir, then Magdum sir, and then Karade sir, and then myself. And then we'll also give some time to other faculty members who are there. If they have any questions, they can actually also ask those questions to today's speaker guest. And all these questions that we are actually giving to you right now, these are actually already coming from our students. So apart from the chat box that's happening there, we already did a survey with all the students, and we actually got these questions in prior, just to make sure, because we had kind of a cyclone coming yesterday, and then we didn't know if our session will actually go through properly, peacefully, and that's why we took a precaution and we got all the questions ready. So Dandekar sir, please, can you go ahead? Thanks.
Yes, respected sir, I'm going to start. My first question is regarding the workforce required for the startup, because what is there for the established companies, when they are selecting the candidates, their procedure is there. So what is the important thing is that how to select the workforce for the startup and what qualities or what parameters should be considered. Hello.
There will be some delay. Okay.
Yeah, you broke up, so I didn't catch the question.
Yes. Hello. Sir, can you listen?
Yeah.
Yes. So how to select the required workforce for the startup?
How to select the
required workforce for the startup, because for established organizations, there are criteria. But for the startup, there may be different requirement or different qualities for that particular workforce. So what kind of workforce should be selected in the startup?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you select the right workforce for the startup, right? That's your question? Okay.
Yes.
This is heavily dependent on the stage of the startup. So if you're just 2 people, it's really how do you select a co-founder? If you're 5 to 10 people, it's how do you make the first hires? And I'll speak to both. When you're first starting, there are many philosophies. This is just my philosophy. There are a couple things that you need to have. The person that you're selecting to work with you, let's say, I don't know, you're building the next airplane, the next electric jet. Well, if you're both engineers, the first thing is, are you both bringing the competencies required to build the actual product or service? The second part of that is, like with any startup, you need to be able to sell the idea. It's not just the engineering. If you don't know how to get it in front of people, if you don't know how to communicate and make the right business decisions to sell and to figure out how do you distribute this idea to other people such that they can take it in and run with it, you're going to go nowhere. So you have to have defined roles where first is the beginning team, do they have the right competencies to actually execute and build a product or service? And then within there, who's doing the selling? So who's going to be the CEO and sell the product and understand how hard it is to get your first 100 customers or 1,000 customers and so on. So really in the beginning, it's a combination of the right skill set, the competency, who's going to be selling the idea. And of course, really importantly, can you work together? Is there enough cultural alignment between the two of you such that you're going to have a really good relationship? Because you're going to be fighting over everything, the marketing, the idea, how to build it, how to engineer it the best way, finances, and it becomes, you're going to spend 10 to 16 hours a day with this person every day for potentially many years. You got to have that longevity. So this would be in the early phases. As you start to scale up and grow this business, you have to then, and that means you're being successful to some degree. You're either raising capital, you're getting customers. Your next hires have to be really, really good. I mean, you don't want to get somebody who's kind of only half into what you're doing or not putting their full effort. The level of competency and the ability of each person that you hire is going to determine the success or failure of your startup. So you have to take it seriously. So those next hires, again, you're looking at how is this person going to enable you to keep on growing? If you're talking about a startup, you're talking about typically exponential growth. So how is each hire going to enable the next level of exponential growth? And you have to, you have to be so careful because it's really easy to hire the second best person. But the question is, if you hire just below that limit, how much damage can be done or how much damage will be done to your startup and to the outcome? And of course, we can go into detail on hires, but I think this is a good way to introduce the concept of how do you look at a co-founder and then how do you look at your next hiring employee, number one, number two, and number three.
Thank you, sir. My second question is how to strategize the funding, how to attract the investors to your startup?
It's a good question. So the question is, how do you attract investors? Again, this varies on the different stages and the type of startup. So my personal philosophy is get traction. If you're just starting with an idea, can you get 100 customers? How quickly did you get 100 customers? How much are they willing to pay for the product and service? An investor is going to want to understand at all stages what the return is. If I give you $25,000 US, when can I expect to see $250,000 returned to me? Is it going to be in 3 years, 4 years? And what's your reasonable process for achieving that goal? Because I'm going to know whether you're being unrealistic and just kind of hoping for the best versus you have a concrete plan of how you're going to acquire customers. So in the early stages, you might attract government funding and grants, right? Because they want to back you. They say, okay, we love this idea. It can help a population. You have a product. You've done some testing and some experiments. Here's a grant. That's an option. Another one could be the angel investors who really understand what you're building personally, so they can take more of a risk. If you're talking about later stages, the further on you go, the more traction you have and you can prove that you can grow this business, that's how that will be the main attractor for investors. But you have different types. You have angel investors, you have venture capitalists, and they have different levels of risk that they're going to assume.
Okay. So, sir, thank you for your information. So next I want to asking that before introducing your product to market, we have to conduct the market survey. So in the changing environment, what should be the ways to conduct the market surveys? Or how to target the customers? How to find out the target customers?
So that's the trick, right? There's no proper way to do it. And that's what's so hard about startups. It's really hard to get users. So let's say you're right, you have to validate an idea. Depending on what you're doing, there could be different channels. So let's take the example of a consumer startup. If you're going to do a consumer startup, you're going to have to go on social media. You're going to have to find ways to recruit and get people to try your product, whether it's going to Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You're going to have to find a way to get your first. Can you get 10 customers? Can you get 100 people? If it's B2B enterprise, can you develop relationships with the people that work in positions of institutions that are willing to give you a chance? So for example, my first startup, the reason why I know Nankishore is because we went to McGill University and said, hey, you have crops, can we fly over them? And then we were introduced to the group that run the agriculture program. So you start small and you look for areas where you can experiment with individuals, whether it's an enterprise or whether it's a consumer. You just have to find the channel and go and get your first 10 users. Start small and then big and then grow.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question I want to ask that, what should be the pointers for the amazing pitch presentations? Whenever you are going to present idea or your startup to someone, it may be customer or it may be the investor. So what points should be discussed within that?
Yeah, so giving a pitch, it's important that right away we understand what you're doing. It's surprising to see how bad this is done or how poorly this is often done because we're so desperate to talk about how amazing this idea we have and we go on and on and on. But say fewer words, please. So the less you say, the better, because now I can understand really quickly what you're doing and it's more impactful. So in one sentence right away, downtime connects people to local therapists. That's it. That's my current startup. That was our pitch. And then you can dive into why you exist. So the next thing is I want to know is why are you coming with this idea? What are you doing for somebody and how are you making it better for their life? Once you explain that, I can say, okay, I get what you're doing. I get why you're doing it. Next is, how have you proven this? How have you gone out and validated that this is something that people want? What's the traction? So in an investor pitch, that's what you're moving through, is you're moving through the stages of what you're doing, why you're doing, how far along are you, where are you going to go next, and how much money do you need? When you're pitching to a customer, it's kind of similar. You want to pitch the same thing. Hey, this is what my project does. This is what we can do for you. Buy it. So you're always selling, whether you're selling to a customer or selling to an investor.
Okay. And my final question is now, what are the different ways other than traditional for the product marketing? Now, everybody is doing product marketing according to his application of product or whatever it be. But what are the unconventional ways for startup product marketing, especially?
There is no magic bullet. Honestly, there is no. It depends what you're doing. I can just give an example for us. Right now, in my current company, we're doing everything from posting to Facebook groups, going on Reddit, we pay for ads because we've raised capital. But we also do some things that are a little bit more unconventional, as you said, where given our service, and I have to think about how I can say this. We do things like leveraging our own user base, leveraging their own kind of traffic to get more customers. So kind of cleverly reselling our product through them. And these things they're unconventional, but they're known. But pretty much every way that you can market a product, the information is already out there. You can Google it and then put it together yourself and figure out ways. So everything you need to know to build a startup is at your fingertips.
Thank you, sir, for your information. Very nice to talk to you. I would like to hand over the session to Dhawale sir again. Dhawale sir? Hello?
Yes, thank you, Ashutosh. Can you hear me? Yes, 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 I'm there. Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes. So now can I actually? Yes. Thank you, Mohit. You answered all the questions. Thank you so much. It was really like essential for us to know the answers to those questions. And so I'll now actually ask or request our madam, Sneha Patil madam, to actually go through the questions. So these questions are related to, there is actually a product, kind of a prototype, like it's a solar car that is being actually developed in our institute. Battery operated solar car, probably probably there are some questions related to that, how they can actually move forward if they want to. So am I right, Sneha Patil madam? Is it the right thing? Yeah.
There are many questions related to the solar vehicle.
So please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, sir. Good evening. It's really nice to having such a conversation with you. Basically, we all are from the electrical department, and many one of a team actually as a project they made a solar vehicle car as a last year project, and they really did it a fantastic. So they just want to ask related that many recognized big brands are there who are actually manufacturing solar vehicles. Okay, but while starting or as a startup, can anyone do anyone can manufacture the some part of that vehicle related thing? Can they start? Can they do the startup any part of one of the vehicle related thing? How can they get into such business? Like any breakthrough for that?
So is the question, they built a solar car, right? And they built a solar vehicle, a complete vehicle.
Sorry?
Did they build a,
Yes.
yes, okay.
Yes,
And
so in our institute, we have like a team of electrical members and mechanical members. So mechanically did the structure, and electrical ones actually did the operation. And then there is a solar, and then there is a battery component for the electrical side. So madam is representing the electrical side of that car, and she's trying to say that, yeah. So now you got the question, thanks.
yeah, so yeah, but is the question like, how do you build a car manufacturing, or is it like car manufacturing versus become a component supplier? Is that the question?
Yeah, component supplier. Can there be a startup to actually become a component supplier that can be useful for solar or electrical vehicles?
Of course. Come on, of course. And
find out the many improvisation points in the big brand vehicle companies. Still means we have such an idea like we can manufacture any specific part for this thing. Like, is it possible?
Yeah, yes. So first is the mindset. You guys got to get the mindset. Yes, anything is possible. It depends what your market is. So if you are going to be in India, well, Tesla is not in India. I don't think so. So you actually can become the auto manufacturer, let's say. And it depends on what you're producing and what kind of vehicle you produce. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good. If you want to enter into another market, it depends if the market is an emerging market or it's an established market. The good news is that for sustainable vehicles, it's almost an emerging market in every market. It's North America and Europe, not as much because you have a lot of electric vehicles, and that's what you're really, that are not solar powered. That's your competition. So I suppose there are two things you can do. One is you can become a parts supplier and a partner to a lot of electric car companies in Europe and in North America, because there's most likely a component that you produce that they need, and you can produce it not only very cheaply, but probably create a very effective component. So in certain markets, you can become a supplier. In where you have a really emerging market, that's where you can become owning the whole thing. So look at the vehicle as a platform itself. The vehicle is a platform. It's got the structure of the vehicle, the design. It's got software. It has the onboard computers, and it has other conversion components, let's say, and the electric motor. So if you view it as a platform, you're really just selling bits of that platform to different markets, right? So yes, the answer is your sustainable vehicles or electric vehicles it's an emerging market globally. Other markets are a little bit more developed. Some are really not developed, and there's an opportunity for you in every one of those markets. It's really just up to you to say, okay, we want to do this. Let's become a player.
Thank you very much for this.
Did that answer the question, or am I completely off? Did I just keep on talking about nothing relevant? Was it good?
Is
It was good.
Okay, good.
So basically, actually, we are more interested to listen like instead of any new idea or a product, can we start a firm with the old basic idea or a product? Means which one is the better to come with a new idea and start up the firm, or otherwise with the basic ideas or a product which are already in a market? Like which one is more good or better?
You have to chase where the challenge is for other people. So like, if you go back to what I was saying of being a supplier, right? Which one is going to be the quickest route to success? So if it's, hey, we know that these companies in Europe are really having a tough time building this component, but in our vehicle, we've actually built this really well. We'll start with that because somebody wants it and you do it better than they can. And it answers your question. So really always look for where the opportunity is. Where are other people having problems to the point where they're like, oh man, we need your solution, please supply to us. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the next one or next, I just like to ask.
But you're not happy with the answers. It's still unclear. Do you want me to clarify?
Yes,
I can dig deeper. Like, are you still not sure what I'm trying to say?
No, sir, I got the idea, like what you want to
Okay.
say.
Okay.
I just right now want to ask you, like, how to identify the customer need. Like, is there any strategy for this?
You have to have a conversation. Really simple. You have to make a list of small companies, small manufacturers, and then figure out who you go to talk to, because now it's B2B. So you're not producing for the consumer, you're producing for other businesses, other enterprise, which means that there are VP of sales or there's VP of engineering. So you find the VP of engineering of these companies and you open a dialogue and you say, hey, what is your biggest challenge that you have? And it always boils down to cost and efficiency. So if they're trying to produce a component that only gets them so many miles, they say, well, I can get you this many more miles at a much cheaper cost given this part of the vehicle. Okay, so the chances are the problem that this manufacturer or supplier has is going to be the same as many other people within that market. So it's not like you're only going after one. Technically, if you solve the problem for that person, there's a good chance that it's a similar issue for other manufacturers. This is how you would approach it. You have to have a customer discovery call, and you have to do it over and over and over until you have a clear idea of where the pain is and exactly what you're going to supply to solve the pain point. And there's no quick way around it.
Thank you. Sir, actually, now I want to ask you, is there, as per your perception, what will be the ideal plan for a startup? Like any strategic plan for a startup?
What? That's such a broad
Ideal
question.
startup plan.
Do you want me to do your startup for you? I feel like you just want me to come in and build your startup. No, I'm joking. The ideal plan. So what do you mean by that?
Like if I have some idea in my mind and I want to start my own firm, then for that, what kind of stages I have to follow to come up to the firm? Like
I just told you the first one, which is the most important. Go out and talk to people. Don't stay inside the room with a treadmill and the computer, which by the way is good. You got to work out and code, but you got to get out in front of your customer, because how else are you going to figure out what people want? Build something that people want. And it's really hard to do that. It's really easy and really hard. Hard because people most startup founders don't realize that you have to have talk. When I started my first company, McGill was one of probably 200 people. McGill University was one of 200 enterprises that I was speaking to at the time just to get started. Ultimately, we sold our company. We had, gosh, 20, like a bunch of insurance companies in the US as our customers, but that came from me talking to 30 or 40 of them face to face. I flew to Iowa. I lived in Iowa, and I went and I knocked on the door, and I went into these big buildings and had meetings until somebody would give me a contract. So you have to be persistent and really have the conversation with people that you want to work with. So do that first. Just focus on that. Don't worry about the rest.
Actually, these are some questions from the student side. I'm just conveyor for that. They just want to ask you related to, like, there are any basic rules or such a habits to achieve a success in a business?
Are there basic rules or habits to succeed in business? Is that the question?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, persistence. You have to, it's really hard to do a startup. It's very painful because you're going to fail a lot. You're going to make mistakes. You have to learn. So you have to have an open mindset. You have to have a growth mindset. Don't stay fixed in your thinking and it's okay to be wrong. You have to accept yourself and accept that you're always going to be learning until you die. So have a growth mindset. Don't be afraid of pain. Get yourself out there, talk to customers, make something that people want, and never lose that mindset because it's going to be it's going to be a struggle. And it's going to take many years. So don't expect to make millions of dollars after a year. Expect to stumble a little bit and then to hang on for many years as you go up and up and up.
Thank you so much, sir. And the last one question is like, how to identify the validity of our product? Like for the next 10 years, it will be in a boom in the market that my product will be like this. How to recognize the validity of our product that we are launching in the market?
Yeah, so if you're talking specifically about what the vehicle that you worked on, that's tough to, if you're, so it depends on the product.
Let's consider we are actually manufacturing as one, like related to the solar, like solar related any components, then how we can identify or recognize the validity for our market, like product market.
Go talk to customers. That's it. Simply, like, don't stick in the lab. Take it to who your target is. If your target is government or your target is another manufacturer, well, go to them and say, hey, can you use this? And how badly do you want it? That's the answer.
Thank you so very much, sir. And it's really nice to listen this all things from you. And I want to thank you on behalf of my team and students, and I'd like to hand over this session to Mr. Dhole, sir.
Yeah, and please tell me if you want to clarify, because everybody here is nice and smiles, but like, if you don't understand, please ask me again so I can clarify and do a better job of explaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aristo, and thank you, Sneha Patil, madam. So now I would like to request our faculty, is Shirsat sir there? Shirsat sir, are you there? Okay, so Sutar sir, would you like to actually, would you like to start asking the questions?
Yes, sir. Hello?
It's between you, Magdum sir, and Karade sir, okay?
Yes, sir. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please
Okay,
go
sir.
ahead.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hi, sir. Okay. So my first question is, what type of documents required for startup?
So I'm assuming it's going to be, are you talking about like corporate documents, legal structure?
Yes, sir. Structure as well as
structure as well as.
Yes, sir. Structure of startup.
Okay. All right. So I can comment in North America, and it's probably going to be quite similar or similar-ish in India. The first thing is you have to have a corporation. So the startup is going to be separate from you. It's an entity in of itself. It's its own person. So you set up typically a corporation that has shareholders and a board of directors. The shareholders in the beginning will be the co-founding team. How you split equity is a challenging question, but the co-founders will own shares of the corporation. The board members should be the founders, and the board dictates, essentially has the voting power in a company. So whoever is on the board, if you have one person on the board, they have all essentially the power to direct the corporation. And then, of course, maybe in your stage, you won't have investors in the beginning, but that's really the first documents are going to be the incorporation, shareholder agreement as well, because you need to have rules that govern the shareholders such that everybody's protected. For instance, you might want to have a document in place where if somebody leaves after 1 week, they don't leave with all their shares. If you leave within the first year, you will get 0 of your shares. If you leave between year 1 and year 2, you'll get 25% of your shares and so on. So you want to create protection for all the shareholders, vesting periods, and then agreements to these rules in a document called a shareholders agreement. So yeah, definitely incorporation, issue the shareholders agreement, make sure that the founders have a vesting period, elect board members. These are the basic things that you need to do to start a corporation.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. My second question is how to plan or how to develop essential products.
How to plan or how to develop
how to plan or how to develop essential products.
I don't understand the question.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What do you mean by essential products, and what do you mean by how to develop? I don't really understand the question.
Suppose I develop any product, suppose I develop my lab, calibration lab, suppose. So what type of plan I required to develop calibration lab?
That's complex. It's a complex one, but I think to answer the question in a general way, as a startup, depending on the complexity of what you're developing, the first thing is, what's the cost of development? So whether you're building software, hardware, a lab, a spaceship, you're going to have to know how long it's going to take you to develop that thing and get it to market, and what the cost is. Yeah. So I guess the how-to is really, what's it going to cost you? How long is it going to take? And is your company going to die before you're able to actually release a product into the market? That's the best I can answer this question at a high level.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. Third question is, one of the student from chemical engineering, he asked about why should we go for startup?
You shouldn't. Startups are really hard, and usually you're pulled into them. Typically is a good answer. You find a problem that you're obsessed with solving, and then you become so obsessed you create a solution. The next thing you know, people want you get the solution in front of people, and then you have to create a corporation around it to grow it. So startups are just really, they're tough, and you shouldn't want to start one unless you really, really, really want to go after an idea. If you do, then you do the startup to help support the idea to grow.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, hand over to Dawale, sir. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Sudha, sir. So now maybe Pushpadant, Magdum, sir, are you having your list of questions coming from the student? Your mic is, Magdum, sir, your mic is turned off. Your mic is turned off.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Hello. Yeah, you already covered answers for all the questions almost, but my question is how to do crisis management in the initial stage of startup, because startup is like just newborn baby. Okay, it is just not like that 10 to 15 years company. Okay, so it may be a financial crisis. Okay, because somewhat sometimes investors withdraw their investments. Okay, because of some reason. So how to manage that financial crisis?
Yeah, that's pretty bad. If your investors are pulling money, that's a really tough situation.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of odd because an investor, once you give money to the startup and they take ownership of a share, it's kind of hard to give the money back. That's got to be an extreme situation where in a kind of, usually when you take on an investment, the only way that they can take money back or you owe them money is if you broke the rule of the investment, or you lied to them, or there was some deceit. That's usually I would say the more frequent case, but let's say that happens. Can you increase revenue? Can you drop a couple people? Can you get more money? That's really all you can do. Can you sell to make money? Can you turn some component of what your business is doing into a consulting service to get some cash flow? Which is what I've done before in my first startup. That saved the company. When we were short on cash, we did consulting to get cash flow back in to help survive to the next investment cycle. Then can you get new investors? Obviously is another one. And then really worst case, you would have to start dropping employees at the early stage because you can't support paying everybody. So those are the 3 ways you can manage that.
That is my one question.
If this is happening to anybody right now, that's unfortunate. And I'm so sorry to hear this. I feel your pain. And you can always, I guess, maybe my email can be shared after, and I can give some more advice after this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so Pushpan, you don't have any other questions?
No, sir. That is one.
Okay.
Ravi sir.
Yes, Karade sir, you have questions?
Okay, I have a question.
Thank you.
Hello, I want to ask that. So why is it important to do a monthly cash flow analysis in a business?
Oh, it's critical for a number of reasons. One is you need to understand the profitability of your business. So profit loss is so key, because are you bleeding money? Where are you not cost effective? Are your operating costs so high such that you're not charging enough money? The revenue you're making versus your operating expense is so, it tells you whether your business is viable. So in the beginning, what you're doing is, because you don't have enough data, when you're looking at that cash flow, it's telling you whether your unit economics functions. Because if you are never charging high enough for your product or service, and already your costs are high and your costs are something that's not going to scale down as you scale up, then you don't have a viable business and you should stop. Like, you have to re-examine your pricing model because it's not going to work. Then if your pricing model functions and you know that, okay, maybe you're not profitable right now, which is common, but I understand that my cost versus the revenue growth does scale, and my unit economics. What I mean by unit economics is how much money are you spending versus the dollars earned. So if you are earning $50 per unit sold, and your total cost, not just the cost of marketing, but your total, you take all your operating expenses and your total cost is, let's say, $15 or $20, it's not bad. That's a pretty good ratio that you want to maintain, especially if you know that your cost factor is decreasing marginally as time goes on, because you gain cheaper labor or cheaper production costs with volume. So if that's true, even if your costs were a little bit too high versus the amount of revenue, you know that it's actually going to come down with the volume, and it'll kind of balance out and you'll have a healthy ratio, a good combination. You're looking for a ratio between revenue against cost. So your cash flow is telling you that story, telling your investors that story over time. As you progress, what it's indicating then is how well are you operating your business. So As you're increasing and time goes on and revenue increases and then your costs are going up, it's just telling you where your business is going and whether you're going to hit profitability, or how you can kind of achieve profitability. It's also going to indicate how you're performing. So if you don't have revenue targets, and this is really important to have key performance indicators, KPIs, you need to know where you're going to be in 12 months, where you can be in 12 months, where can you be in 18 months. And you need to hit your targets. If you're not hitting your targets, it'll tell you you're doing something wrong. And you have to reassess what the challenges are.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karade sir. Do you have any more questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so may I now ask, yes. Sorry. So now may I ask some more faculties from our institute department, like maybe Smita Patil madam or Piri Patil madam, or maybe even Madan Phadke sir, if you have any questions, probably would you like to ask any questions that actually were being asked by your students? Or should I ask Dinesh sir to ask his questions, like, coming from his students?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Just what I had been like listening to the conversation between all our faculty member friends and with sir. Like what the questions I had in the mind of my student actually from our department who had been participating SIH and all other activities. Saying what questions and not the way what they have framed the questions. Yeah, I've got the answer for that from sir.
So the questions were repeated. So the questions were repeated. You already have
yeah,
the answers for those questions.
Yeah, means from the sir, whatever the question he had answered, like probably I've got the answer for that. Uh, like what questions have been framed from the student? Like the same lines, not with the purport of the different words or like sentence, but it was the meaning was the same. What I want to say, I've got the answer, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I
Okay,
think
sir.
Priyanka Patil madam is going to be asking a question. She seems to be like, enable her mic. So can you please go ahead, Priyanka Patil madam? No? Yes? Hello? Okay, so probably can I ask some faculty member, like, probably like Karade sir, Sutar sir again, or Magdum sir, probably there are some actually questions on the chat box, or probably there is actually some questions in the private actually chat, if possible, or if not, then maybe can we ask our principal sir if he actually wanted to address or ask any questions, and probably then thank you, sir.
Hello, Mohit.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. Whatever just earlier I had discussed with you, the success rate of the startups in India is about 3 to 4%. What about the success rate in US and your area, and why the success rate is low in India? What may be the reasons? Can you give some inputs to our students? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's a great question. So first, if it's about 3% in India, it's the same in North America. Our success rate is not quite high. Majority of startups fail. I would say maybe 80 or 90% of startups in North America fail in their first year. You just don't hear about it. You hear about the Facebooks and Instagrams and Tesla and SpaceX, but they make up less than 1% of the market. They make up 0.1%. So many people start and fail, and you never hear about. They have so much learnings that they can give to people, but you never hear from them. So it's not that different with regards to failure. I would say that there is a difference in the market and opportunity. India is a much larger market population-wise, significantly so, which prior to the global pandemic had this really big emerging middle class and a growing economy. And there is significant opportunity where we saw trends, increased consumption in certain goods, which when I was at Solera, my job was to look at products that we can bring in the auto software market to India, which was growing and growing. Our market share was growing in India. So I do know that there was a couple years ago, and obviously up until recently, a significant opportunity. I think the difference that you do have, obviously, is how capital is distributed. So in North America, we have this culture, particularly in the US, where there's a lot of money coming from private institution that pumps it into startups and startup ideas. And I guess the question, or one of the questions, can be, what does that look like in India? What are the institutions that are distributing the appropriate funds to the people that want to try ideas? And then how are you incubating and accelerating these individuals? So how are you enabling them to do more? And that's probably one part of the challenge, is to identify what that is. Obviously, you have lots of talent. You have a big pool of people, a big population. And it's a question of how well do you organize that to become a leader in innovation and in startups specifically, which you can. So the potential is there. It's a question of organization and institutional capital, access to the appropriate platforms that enable people to become entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial. You don't need to look to what's happening necessarily in other markets to be a leader. You can develop your own, you can kind of develop your own leadership in your own startup ecosystem without needing to do too much collaboration, if you want, with even North America, even though it's beneficial for you to create these partnerships and to distribute you produce goods, you can produce goods and great technology at a cost that's significantly cheaper than what can be produced in North America, which is your greatest advantage, just like China, but China has other issues that you don't have. So you can actually sell technology and produce great technology to great manufacturers in the US and Canada, continue to leverage that, and then get, not government, but is there a way to create enough venture capital in India? Like how does that start? What institutions will create venture capital for startups? You don't need too much of it because your costs are low.
Yeah. But
what you end up selling within your own market, and then what you can, is going to be vastly different to what you can sell in the North American market or European market. So it's a complex, topic with many moving pieces.
But as an institute of engineering and technology, what kind of ecosystem we should develop, and what are the main elements of this ecosystem?
So you made the right choices by taking your students and bringing them to challenges. I can tell you what happens in Montreal. So both McGill and Concordia University created incubators and accelerators. They even give out cash prizes. They have a space where essentially they enable, especially Concordia, they enable people to come from academia and work on a startup and potentially even just make that their primary focus. So I think what you can do as an institution is foster a space for people that are really, really interested in building something. Give them a space to come, to meet, collaborate, to build relationships with each other, because it could be that somebody from, that's studying electrical engineering, there's a mechanical engineer, and actually they would have created a great company, but they were never able to sit down long enough to make an idea happen. So create a physical space, create an ecosystem, bring in people that have done it before to talk to them, to educate them and encourage them. People need encouragement. So show them that, yes, you can do it. And then of course, if it's possible for the institution to either be a stakeholder or give some small grants and do competitions and make sure that the startups are viable, then you can reward the individuals, the students that have created a viable platform or a viable product that they can then sell, and you've given them the funding and the advisory to then grow that. So you need to make sure you have an ecosystem that has investors, people that are knowledgeable in the field, entrepreneurs. You have to have the right ecosystem that your students can plug into and leverage and grow.
Can we have some collaborations with you to go ahead with some new startups at our institute?
Sorry, say that again.
Can we have some collaborations with you for some of the new startups that may emerge at our institute to take them ahead? Can we
Absolutely.
have some kind of collaborations or your guidance at our institute, which may be at, of course, we will decide the way in which, how can we go ahead and.
Yes, absolutely. I'm more than willing to help. However I can, I will be able to give my perspective. There are many perspectives, of course. There's no right way to do something, but yeah, I'm happy to help.
Kudos.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So Principal Sir, do you have any other questions? Maybe I can invite, like, because I see some faculties from other departments, like I see Professor Dr. Deepak Kadam Sir, the Sector R&D Sir, Hargure Sir, who are also available and listening to the session. So probably they want to raise any questions, and they can please go ahead and discuss with Aristo.
Yeah.
Are they available?
Yeah. Check.
Yeah, I can see them. They're there, but probably
Sir.
that connection or something.
Devade sir.
Yes. Yes,
I have
sir,
one
you want to
question.
have any questions? Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir. Yeah. I want to ask the Aristo sir. Please, sir. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Aristo sir.
Hey, can you hear me?
In India, sir, majority 80 to 90% student after graduation goes for job or service, not for startup. Then what sort or what type of mindset is required for startup? What is your suggestion for our student?
Yeah, it's good to go for a job. Nothing wrong with that, of course. And staying in academia, obviously, especially in engineering, is needed. To start a startup, the entrepreneur's mindset is somebody who has to deal with ambiguity constantly. So there's no structure when you're starting a startup. You have to create the structure, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable doing that for years. It gets harder and harder as you grow your business. So I would say don't start a startup for the sake of starting a startup. Start a startup because it's fundamentally, you're pulled into it because you're driven by wanting to make a change with something that's important to you. So again, going back to, especially for engineers love to make things more effective, more efficient. You're obsessed with it, and which is a good thing. So if you identify something that you say, okay, I can make this 10 times better, and I know that people are going to want it, and you want to pursue that, then you're going to start adopting all the mindsets necessary to grow whatever that product or service is. So it's something that you can't teach. It's hard to, you can explain it as I'm explaining it right now, but truly entrepreneurship is just something that you have to live and experience. And it comes as a consequence of your drive to really want to build something, and you're so just obsessed with making it exist. It's the best way I can describe it.
Is it okay?
Sir, go ahead. Yes. So as thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for asking the questions, and thank you so much, Aristo. You have tried your best. I mean, I wouldn't say like you tried, but you did your best, because all questions are actually fair enough, and the answers were definitely even more fair enough. And I actually have a series of questions, and one of the question was the same which already our principal sir has mentioned. Like, those two questions, I also had the same questions in my mind. And then, like, for example, if we, like, let's say, like, if we think, like, maybe if we can do some kind of a collaboration, so, or maybe, some kind of a partnership, or like, whichever happens in future, we don't know right now. So is it actually, could there be any legal issues, like, because Canada, US, India, like, how can a startup become, with, like, multinational people, like, and what is the right way to actually, like, like to structurize it? Like, one of our professor already asked that question, like, what is the structure of a startup? So I'm actually thinking about that. If you can answer.
So the question is, how do you create a startup that has stakeholders from different countries?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's doable. I mean, the countries, it depends where you, from a legal perspective, where you incorporate the business. So you can have a Canadian corporation that has shareholders who, they may have residents inside the country, they may have residents outside the country. And it depends on how the government that regulates the corporations, the government, so in Canada, for instance, it's called Industry Canada, regulates Canadian corporations, and that's run by the government. So they have rules on, on shareholders and where the shareholders live, and maybe not so much where the shareholders live. I'm not sure if it's dependent on that. I know, I'm not sure what the actual law is in terms of, like, does a Canadian corporation? No, it doesn't. It can actually be owned by a foreign company, I'm pretty sure. So you can create a Canadian corporation and have it owned by a foreign entity. Same thing in the United States, it's more complex because you can create a legal corporation in every state. There is no federal corporation in the US. So you have, I guess, 51, 52 states where you can create a corporation. And it could be a foreign investor who owns that corporation. So from a legal structure standpoint, I don't see any obstacle or challenge. Really, where there's a challenge is the people that are working together. So do they want to work together, and how are they going to work remotely? Is it something that can be done? And the difference in time, is that going to interfere with productivity and so on? So there's no particular legal challenge to my knowledge. I'm not a lawyer, that will prevent you from creating a corporation for which the shareholders and stakeholders could be multinational. Was that the question?
Yes, exactly. That's the question. Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
I think we have to enter into an agreement, and this agreement has to be sent to Foreign Affairs Ministry, and they will, I think, give permission. And Canada, India has signed many treaties to support each other in education and industry. So that, I think, it may not, it may be very easy for us to go ahead with such kind of collaborations. There may not be any problems, I think so.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think it depends on the level of collaboration, because it's for a private corporation in Canada to sign a service agreement with a foreign company, there is no government involvement. Like, so if I draft a service agreement where one corporation provides a service to another corporation, that's private and has nothing to do with the government. So I think it depends at what level are you collaborating in, and where there needs to be government involvement.
Yeah, great.
Yes. So thank you, Principal Sir, and thank you, Aristo. I also, had a question in my mind. Usually, everything works on budget, right? So everything is a budget. Budget is the main thing. So if you don't have any budget, you can do nothing. So usually for startups, what is the general structure of the budget, and what is the range? what does your experience say? Like, you have been doing this for a long time now. So something, let's say in Canadian dollars, so probably we can actually go back to the Indian currency maybe. Could you probably talk something about it?
Your budget is zero.
The budget is zero.
Yeah, no, your budget's zero. Like when you start a startup, you don't have any money, right? So nobody's going to give you money for an idea. If they do, then they're really nice people. So in the very beginning, you're going to have to put something together, not just a business plan, but if it's engineering, maybe you have some design, some plan that you're going to show, where you can show somebody who can give you money the viability of the business. And so whether this is government, whether it's a bank, whether it's private funding, everybody's going to want to know how serious are you about your business and how viable is this? Otherwise, you're going to waste everybody's time. So in the beginning, you have no money. So imagine you have a few months to find a way to make money. Well, then you start from scratch, you build it up yourself, you take your own time and your own little savings to pay your rent and to have some food on the table. And you very, very rapidly get to work and don't stop until you get to a point where you know you can get some funding. Obviously in India, this is going to be, I'm assuming, a little bit more challenging because you don't have the same capital or private capital that exists in North America. So for instance, for me, I'm at an advantage and a disadvantage against you. You can live a lot longer for a lot cheaper than I can, which is your advantage against me. I can raise money probably a lot quicker because it's all over the place. I walk down the street into a VC firm and I pitch them and I do it 100 times. So yeah, just assume that you start off with no money and that you can get money, but only if you can prove the viability of your business, and then you can unlock a little bit of capital. So for us, give an example, initially we started the second venture with no money in the bank at all. And we built the software, we launched the software, I built it myself, I marketed it myself, I didn't pay anybody to do it. Once I launched it, I got 100 customers myself. And then with that information so I did a year of experimenting to get to the idea that was really something that was useful. So it took me a year to get to the point where I was happy with something. Then I launched that thing. And then within a couple of weeks of launching that thing, or a few weeks of launching it, we picked up our first investment. And then that investment led to our second investment. So within 6 months, we raised, 6 figures US dollars. So that was my path in my second venture. In my first venture, again, no money. And we eventually had to get a customer after another customer that was our funding, came from customers that were paying us. So thanks to McGill and other people. And then we grew from there.
Okay, thank you, Aristo, for answering that question. I have a lot of questions, but we are not very, we were kind of short on time, and I'm just seeing some questions that are actually arising in the YouTube chat box. And one question, if I wanted to read that, it's there are 2 questions. Always there is a fear to start business. So would you be able to comment on this? There's always a fear to start the business.
Yeah, that's very normal. It's very common to feel fear, and that's a good sign. That means you're smart, because you're realizing the danger. But don't let it control you. If you let anxiety and fear control you, you don't make good decisions. So you have to learn to work with the fear, to accept it, to understand the risk. But you also can work smartly. So when you set goals and you say, okay, I have 3 months. So then set some goals. Say in your first month, I'm going to build the website. I'm going to market this. I'm going to get 100 users. And as long as you're setting goals that lead to sustainability of your business, and you make sure that you're hitting those goals, you can protect yourself from some pain in terms of failure because you weren't planning smartly. But the fear is common, and the fear is going to grow because as a business grows, your responsibility grows. It doesn't become less because now you hire people. They have families. You have to pay them salary. If you make a mistake, then their families suffer and you have to take that responsibility. Then you get investors. So things get harder, not easier, and you have to develop the mindset to become harder and harder yourself, because the earliest stage is the beginning stage. It just becomes more challenging.
All right, thank you, Aristo. I hope Ms. Ranjana Patil, who actually raised this question, got the answer. There's another question. His name is Hitesh Maya. He's actually commenting like some companies today are giving huge discounts on products, yet they are running in profit. What is your view on this? Are they facing losses for a while and targeting on huge profits in future?
It depends. Sometimes they're giving discounts because it's marketing. They have a marketing budget and they know that instead of paying for ads, they can give discounts on products, which they can afford to do because it just comes out of their marketing budget. And then they're still profitable. So an example would be like, hey, I'm going to give our business, we connect people to therapists. If I say to you, well, we're going to give $5 off your therapy if you refer a friend, that's because the cost of acquiring a user for us is $10. So if we pay you $5, we just saved $5 and you did all the work for me. So we're not losing money. We're actually saving money by paying and giving discounts away. So that's one way that's one thing that startups do, is they're just moving their marketing budget around in a way such that they save money and they can leverage their customers to be evangelists and spread the word. In other cases, yes, companies do lose money. They lose money because, exactly as was pointed out by the student, they can dump a bunch of capital into marketing and operating at a loss because they're obsessed with growth. They know that on their timeline, they know that they're going to be profitable in 18 months or 20 months, but they want to grow. So startups in the beginning or at any point have to make a decision. Do you want to focus on profitability or do you want to focus on growth? And those are two different tracks. If you're focusing on growth, then you're just growing at all costs and you're dumping money into your marketing engine until you're huge user base. If you're focused on profitability, you're trying to say, what is the right amount of dollars to stop having a loss? And then it's a different growth method, if you will. But it's a really good question.
Okay. Actually, there are like some other questions, but I actually had a question. So, for example, like, in terms of startups, what I see is, there can be a startup for, like, what Madam was mentioning, like, can we actually have some kind of a product that is supplied to some other company to build the entire product or something like that. So something I would say like a hardware, and probably there will be a software. So probably can there be a startup for, like, a IT or a software company, and probably a startup for a hardware and a manufacturing company. So like, let's say for both of them, like, is there any difference, like, when we actually think about, like, as a startup, or there's actually different things that you do for a IT and a software startup, and there's probably different set of rules and things that you do for a hardware and a manufacturing startup. So what do you see here? Because I think right now you already had something, a startup which was like IT based, and now you're having a startup which is actually something probably a hardware based. So how do you see that in terms of difficulties and probably in terms of easiness?
Hardware startups are really hard because they're costly to get started, right? To build a software startup, it doesn't cost you anything because you can write the code yourself. To build a hardware startup, it's parts, lots of parts, and it depends on the complexity of what you're building, of course. But typically, hardware startups require a little bit. They require cash upfront, or somebody who's generous and can donate parts for you to experiment, right? So they're not the same with regards to the cost of starting up, and that's because of the actual hard components that you have to get. Outside of that, with regards to and even distribution and scale, like when you're talking about a hardware startup, you also have to consider manufacturing, right? And manufacturing process, manufacturing cost, assembly, design. It's order of magnitudes a little bit more challenging because now you have a manufacturing operation that you have to scale up. So they differ in terms of cost and operation and planning, for sure. You can't treat them the same from that perspective. from the perspective of, can you do either one? Absolutely. I think the initial question, especially with the vehicle and the solar powered vehicle and the components, is it's never a question of can you do it? You can do it. Everything that I've heard here is reasonable. I suppose it's how well you're organizing to make it happen, given the resources you have, which are limited. So a software startup compared to the hardware startup, it's easy street because you guys can sit and code all day and all night. And have very little cost, maybe the food on the table and the rent and the electricity, but it's easy for you to get something out there tomorrow and get feedback right away and then get customers paying you for it. So my hat goes off to everybody that wants to do a startup. And if you're doing a hardware one, I can really appreciate the difficulty of it. But they are different with regards to operation and process and manufacturing, for sure.
Okay.
Was that the
Thank you,
question
Arvind.
though? Was that the question?
Yes. It was the question, and I think we got the answer. And I have another question, which is, so most of these questions are coming from the students. So the question is like, do we have to do any courses related to business? What are the resources to do them? Are they like open source, community driven, or like, do we have to pay? And can you also explain like, what is the role of co-working space, how it can be useful in startups? So I know that you have a BSc in chemistry and you also had a degree in business. So probably that's why it was probably helpful for you to do a startup versus like, if someone doesn't have any degree or any kind of a major course in business, do you think you recommend something for them to do, or it will just like, it will just come? So what is so 3 questions in one, like, co-working space as well. How does it help for startup?
Yeah, so business school is really bad for people that want to do business. Business school is really good at producing managers. When you go to business school, to be honest, you don't really learn because it's just case studies of how to do things. The best thing about business school is when you learn about a very specific application, like accounting is really useful. Like accounting, you should learn accounting, finance, financial engineering, things like that. I think are quite, they're vertical. So you have to learn this level to get to the next one and so on and so forth. A lot of other things in business school are very horizontal, where you don't necessarily need the lower course to unlock the higher courses. And they only are good at producing people that are going to be a manager. If you want to start a startup, you don't need to go to business school at all. You don't need to read books on starting a startup. I think you already have, and I said this before, you have 95% of the ingredient, which is you're all engineers. So, and I'm a bit biased, obviously, but I do believe that engineers make really great founders because they understand the product so intimately, and they can sell really well if they work up the experience and the courage. So the answer is no, you don't need business school. No, you don't need any courses, but you definitely do need to be in an ecosystem of people that are like-minded, that are passionate to be building what you're building. And then you have a bit of guidance to maybe push you along the way and help refine your packaging to get you to sell. All a startup is you build a product and you sell it. That's it. You don't need to understand law. You don't need to understand accounting. You will learn these things as you go along as a necessity. But in the beginning, you just need to refine your pitch, know how to sell and build a product, and just focus on the first steps. Don't worry about the next. As for the co-working space, if you just eliminate or if you distill it down to the most important thing is that you are in an environment where you can learn. So you need to be in a space where there are other people that can give you some help, can support you. So if you're building something in engineering, maybe you're next to somebody who also is a really great engineer and can help you improve your product or do something quicker, better, faster, cheaper. Maybe you're going to be around somebody who knows how to get a corporation going or understands how to put together a financial projection. So it's really look at it as, where can I go to be in an area where there are people who can give me some help or some advice? And it doesn't necessarily even need to be a physical space. My first startup, I did everything virtually for so long, and I was able to have one-on-one meetings with different people that had different experience, and just kind of grow my business solo. So yeah, co-working spaces, It's not so much the co-working space, it's mostly just being in an area where you can collaborate with people that can help you.
All right, thank you. And I have a last question coming from the chat box. So the question is COVID-19 pandemic, like, this is the situation. So in this situation, is it the right time to start up?
It's never a great time to start a startup, but now is probably the best time because it's the hardest time. If you survive COVID, this economic downturn as a startup founder, there's nothing that's going to stop you in life. So you will have developed you would have worked your brain in a way to find solutions in the most challenging time. So I would say that actually it's a great time to start a startup if you want to do it, because it's the hardest.
Thank you, Aristo. So I hope Ranjana Padil, who is actually on the YouTube side, she got the right answer for a question. And again, actually, there is our professor Sneha Padil, madam. She actually wanted to ask you again some questions. So I'm inviting her. Is it okay, Aristo? We're still not 2 hours. Like we're like quarter to 2 hours. Is it okay?
Absolutely. I loved her first questions.
Okay, thank you. Please, Sneha Padil, madam, if you're there, can you go ahead? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
There's just some echo.
Yes, just a minute.
Okay, so before she comes back, maybe can you just mention about your startup facility? Like, I've been to your place, and like, you had an apartment, and you're staying in that apartment 24 hours. And then you had like, some kind of a setup, which also included a treadmill, so you can actually work on and keep yourself fit. And then, so can you just like, mention like, how could be a startup, like, so because people here, what they think like, facilities are not there, infrastructure is not there, and then we can do nothing. But I see that, it's not true, because we can do anything if we actually have a will to do it, and if we have time to do it, and if we know what to do it, and if we have some guidance, as you mentioned, like, some kind of people who are around us who can actually teach us and tell us and mentor us. And that's it. Like, as you said, the budget is zero, absolutely zero to start with. So I believe in that, like, and I've seen you doing it. I've seen people at McGill doing it. I've seen people at Concordia doing it. I've seen some people in India as well as doing it. So can you just again bring that picture? So, because instead of me telling that, people don't believe in me many times. They believe in people from the outside the world who tell something. So can you actually like just bring that picture?
How is your mind so sharp? I'm impressed. Your mind is so crystal clear, and I can't believe you remember that. Yeah, wow.
I did.
That was, yeah, I can't. That was 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So I started my first startup in an apartment with no money, and all I knew was, okay, I have to make sure that I physically in good shape. So I had a stationary bike and a pull-up bar, and I would just jog. So I do lots of cardiovascular and work, and if I wasn't training, I was coding. And yeah, it took me probably 3 to 6 months to build up all the code for the first project that we were working on, and it's rough. So I started off doing some consulting to give some starting capital, then use that capital to eventually survive until we got our first venture capital investment, and things start to build from there. But it's challenging. It's challenging because you're going to go through highs and lows in a startup. Startup has its own life cycle, its own sales cycle. And we pivoted. There were a couple of times where initially we're like, okay, well, we're going to do images of crop. And then eventually we ended up doing insurance, and we got to insurance because a crop insurer wanted us to fly planes. So the business was, can you fly drones and planes over either crop or buildings, and does somebody want that data? Well, it turns out in the US that insurance companies need very specific information about In some cases, if it's a crop insurer crop, or buildings, like the exterior of a building, how it looks, and then it depends whether it's residential or commercial. But yeah, we kind of like kept on trying to find our way through different industries until finally we landed on something, and we became effectively an inspection company that was tech enabled. And that took a few years. So it was living in an apartment with a stationary bike and my dogs, and just working day and night for you know, a couple to a few years, until eventually we were acquired by a software provider by a partner. So initially, we approached somebody for a partnership, and they just said, "Hey, you know, we're a $1 billion company, and we really like what you're doing, so you should just join us." And man, I was getting really hungry, so I was like, "Yes." I took the acquisition because it was great for my life personally. It was a big change. You go from, you know, living off of almost nothing for years, no furniture, nothing, and all of a sudden you have, you know, your life is kind of set. So that was a pretty big transition, and I was working for a big corporation. I guess right around the time you went back to India, actually, and I worked there, and eventually I became essentially an advisor for other startups. So I led the incubator of this big corporation where we had many ideas, and it was a global entity. They were in Europe, India, Australia, America, South America. They were the largest provider of auto collision software. So at the time, they did about 70% of the world's auto claims. So my job was to create new products, continue to run my old business underneath their brand. And it was a different type of growth, because then I had to learn how to grow within a large corporation, and how do you manage a team, a corporate team. It's very different. There are politics involved, and there are procedures, and a different way of just working. And eventually I left there, and actually, you know, my mother was sick, so I went back to Montreal to be with my mother. And it was during this time where I was thinking about the different projects that I wanted to work on. And now that I had some capital, I didn't have to worry too much about the runway. And I started my next business. So the next business, I did a year of research where I was working, it's in the behavioral health space, so psychotherapists. I spent a year doing personal research and testing my software. I would go into a therapist's office. I would walk into a clinic, literally, and I would beg them to try my software, because you have to go out and talk to your customers. There's no other way. And I would go and I would be persistent. I spoke to over 250 therapists, and I was able to get, 80 of them to try my software, because I just wouldn't stop for months saying, try it, try it, try it, try it. And eventually I discovered another big problem within the mental health space, which was, hey, we were trying to see how people were doing when they were in therapy. Nobody actually measures whether somebody is feeling better after therapy. So there should be some platform that's able to measure an outcome. When you go to therapy, is your mental health challenge improving? How do you measure that empirically? And the next problem is, people were not going to the right therapist. So often if you have a challenge for anxiety, you might go to somebody or you have a challenge for trauma, you might go to somebody who can help you with trauma. So when we started discovering these gaps, because of the personal work that I was doing to figure out, what's a really good idea, I discovered a problem, and I started a company around that to support the problem, to support solving the problem. And I put my own money into it. It wasn't supposed to be a startup, but then the next thing you know, it starts to grow. People want to use it, and you require more capital beyond what I could invest personally. And so then I went out and I raised some capital to support it, and that's where we are today. So I've been on a constant journey of entrepreneurship, and there's even higher levels that I can personally achieve. I feel like I'm still very young in my knowledge of startups. So there's a lot more levels to unlock, and a lot more growth, personal growth for myself. So I'm excited for the success, but also I'm very excited to fail so I can learn and do something a lot better.
Okay. So So I think you answered all my questions, and you answered almost all faculty people questions. You answered questions received by our principal, sir. Maybe I can again ask someone if anyone wants to have any question, or do we stop? There was actually one question that actually came from my student. Maybe if I can discuss, and maybe you can actually just give a brief answer. Like, will be there any fully functional virtual AI-enabled business incubator in future, or is it already there? If you know about anything about this.
Well, it already exists. I mean, you have Techstars, they have their AI accelerator program, and right now it's virtual because of COVID-19. There are AI accelerators in North America, and every accelerator right now can't do in person.
And another question is, what will be the future of 3D printing in manufacturing and production? So is this a good line for startups?
I think so. I mean, there was the first wave of 3D printing where nobody knew how to do something at scale. So you had kind of like more micro level production, nothing where now you have some people that are trying to build houses, like 3D printed houses. And obviously there is 3D printing for auto parts, which is becoming bigger and bigger. And that's being combined with AI that's basically designing the auto part way and designing it and giving geometries that a human brain would not be able to otherwise come up with. So when you combine the two in manufacturing, you end up effectively producing something that is much more efficient in terms of process and in terms of its function within a larger system, and much more effective. So when you look at it like that, then absolutely there's a future. How we get to it and when there's enough impact such that the market can mass adopt, this is a different question, and that I don't have the answer to.
Okay, so before actually we stop, actually there's one last question, and it's been actually coming from many of the faculties as well as many of the students. So can you share your personal experiences while establishing a business, especially in the early days? You have mentioned it to some extent. Can you actually mention it, like, in more, like, more details? That would probably help. Like, I again ask you the same thing, like, to bring that picture, but can you actually just say something more?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about the, like, what aspect, the emotional side of it, or what do you?
Yeah, both emotional side, financial side.
Financial.
And the inspiration side, like, what inspired you, how, you mentioned how you got the problem, how what actually made you to start up? Like, have you been actually a person who always have been dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur, or was it accidental, or it was intentional, or like all those things? It's open.
Yeah, I think it's actually a kind of a complex question, because you have to, well, you can understand yourself quite well. I think just as scientists, we don't understand scientifically the behavior, the pathology of what is really the entrepreneur and why an entrepreneur does what they do. I think you can describe the behavior at a surface level, which is, okay, we're incentivized to build something. Well, why? It can be so complicated. I think part of it is you don't want to fail strategically. It's okay to fail tactically, but you just don't want to, you just can't, you refuse to give up. You refuse to fail. You would rather die than fail. And you become so fixated on all or nothing. So this aspect of entrepreneurship is true for every entrepreneur, is that there's like this persistence and refusal to quit. You need to have that consistency and that persistence. You have to be like a cockroach. Cockroach can survive a nuclear winter. Okay, and so it's a compliment. If you're a cockroach, good. For me personally, it's always tough, Because as I said before, things get harder and harder, not easier. And you have to accept that. You have to accept being uncomfortable because you're constantly worried about money, because it's a business. And even when things are going well, you have to look in the future and be responsible and understand, okay, where are we going as a business and where are we going as a company? So if it's at the beginning, how do you get enough cash to live, to survive for 6 months, for a year? Can you make revenue? Can you go and pitch and raise capital? So to do that while you already have no money, or if you have debt, it's very stressful, because maybe you have a family to support, right? And you have to be able to manage all these emotions and all these things that are running through your head. If you pile on fear to that, fear is going to cripple you. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that you can manage the fear and manage the anxiety. Fear and anxiety is normal. We all experience it. All of us have it. It's fine. But what's not fine is when you let it get out of control. So you have to be able to make sure you're able to manage yourself, to be able to move forward. And I do challenge everybody to become extremely introspective and reflect on your own thinking, because it's going to give you a lot of clues to why you really want to do something. Personally, why I want to do my first startup, and going back to like my childhood, there were always elements of entrepreneurialism in me. I just didn't know what it was. Nobody came and told me, Aristo, you should be an entrepreneur. I just did things all the time and had a lot of energy. So I just didn't get it. And so when I started to study initially math in university, I was unhappy. I was good at the coursework, but I wasn't very excited. I was almost depressed. I was like, oh man, this is not what I want my life to be. I didn't want to be a monkey at a computer, doing code and solving problems that way, and just only doing that, which is nothing wrong with that, of course. Don't want to be insulting to anybody. It's more like, for me personally, I had a different vision for what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what it was. So I started to build projects in university as an emotional release to occupy my brain, because I had to do some extra work. It's like a workout. And people start to like those projects, to the point where one of them had like 30,000 students every month sign up for it, and somebody offered to buy it. And I gave it away for free because I didn't understand, again, business and entrepreneurship. When you're 20, 21, you don't know anything. So I just gave it away. And eventually I figured out, okay, I think I saw my dad, he sent me a link to this thing called Y Combinator, which is a Silicon Valley accelerator. And he said, you should probably apply to this. And I said, oh, I don't know what the hell this accelerator, sorry. I don't know what this accelerator is, and what can come out of it. Eventually I found that there's communities of entrepreneurs, and I found out, oh, what's a startup, and started doing my research and start to learn in my early 20s about what startups were and what investors were and what a business really is. I had no clue. So at that point, I was living on my own and building software for fun. I didn't want to work within the field of physical chemistry, because I wanted to build, I didn't want to build a project that would only impact like my supervisor. I want to build projects that would probably impact more people and were purely more software related, because it felt good. So I started to build software in my apartment, the one that you visited. And eventually I just followed what I was passionate about. And then that people wanted to pay for it. And then I had to build a business around it. So that's what I mean by you're often pulled into it without knowing, is you kind of you're going on this path of you're building different projects. And usually one of the projects you're working on, somebody wants to use it. And then you have to structure that in a way where you say, okay, well, if I get enough people that want to use it, and I can make this a profitable, sustainable business, I can then support that project and help it grow. So it's a symbiotic relationship where you're looking at building a business around something for the sake of seeing that thing grow. It's not always because you want to be rich. I don't think that being rich, if it's your goal, that's fine. But I think another way that you can look at it is, am I excited to build this thing? Can it have an impact? Can it deliver value? And then you'll often start organizing yourself around this to make it happen. So yeah, my path to entrepreneurship was, I don't know if it's similar to other people, maybe it is, but that was mine. It was a bit, it was a little bit in university doing projects. After university, I did more projects. Somebody wanted to pay me for it. I said, hey, I love what I do. If I can make a business and live off of this, wonderful. And that's actually what I did. So from the age of 23, I'm now just turned 32. I've most of the time just been working on my own things, and people have paid me a lot of money for it. So you can do it. It just takes time, and you need to be very mindful of what your goal is and what's reasonable and what's realistic.
Okay, so thank you so much, Aristo. It's been even more than 2 hours. We had a very good chat. I think we had a very good chat. A lot of people, a lot of faculties, a lot of students, a lot of probably to be entrepreneurs, to actually probably potential startuppers. Definitely might have gained a lot of information, knowledge from your talk today. Though always it's always like, time is a constraint, and we cannot just cover everything. There are a lot of questions, still a lot of questions from the students, and probably, as you mentioned it before, I can probably share your email with everyone, and then probably they can contact you. They can mention that, okay, I'm on behalf of Dr. Davle, or we are on the behalf of Pvpit at BUDHGAON. We are reaching you, and maybe you can probably interact with them in future. So probably we can mention that. I don't know how much time you have. It's all up to you. Yeah.
Students, if you're listening, please don't email me. I don't want to. I'm joking. I'm kidding. Please email me. Give me all your questions. I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. So, and as I mentioned, I started my camera, and it's me, Kishore. So if you can see me, I'm here, and I'm just saying hi to everyone, almost like when is the time to say bye. It was very nice to see you. It was very nice to talk to you. And again, I would like to mention my thanks to our principal, sir, and I'll actually mention my thanks to my department, where I work, and and extend my thanks to our R&D dean, and our R&D academics, our dean academics, and also our in India, the institute falls under some kind of corporation, but it's more like a cooperative corporation. And so we have a trustee, we have a group of different people who actually are the part of the management. So I would like to also express my thanks to them, and even beyond them, if there are many other stakeholders like the students, the parents of this institute. And then again, I want to go back to my department, and maybe they would actually express their vote of thanks, and then we can conclude the session. So before that, if you wanted to say something, please go ahead, and then otherwise we'll just end the session of today.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful to get all these questions, and I'm extremely thankful and appreciative for your time and for the questions. I hope that I've been able to contribute and deliver some insight. And it's a tough subject, because it can be quite complex, and a lot of it's based on behavior, and of course ability to execute. I'm always happy to help and collaborate and answer any questions. So please, if anybody has any question, do reach out. I will 100% be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So Department HOD, Karade sir, would you actually take over the floor? Thank you.
Our college and our department, I would like to thank you for giving this and give incubations and more informative. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Fantastic to interact with you.
You had a question, didn't you?
Actually, sir covered up everything. Nand Kishore sir covered up. So it's fine. Actually, some network issue was there.
Okay, well, it's good to see your face before everybody says bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, bye. Bye, Aristo. Bye, Sneha ma'am. Bye, Principal Sir. Bye, HOD. Bye, Institute Department, faculties, everyone. Thank you so much.